Hey everyone, and welcome to our third podcast of Our Deductive, trying to find inspiring lessons for our lives. As always, Carlos, who's talking to Joel by the other side of the phone. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing fine. Happy to hear from you, Carlos. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine too. It's always nice to ask if you're fine because maybe one day I call you and then you're not fine. So yeah, that day the podcast will not go that good. All right. Today I'm really excited, man. I'm really excited.
What is it? What is it about?
Don't pretend that you don't know it. Okay, because today we're talking for one of the, I think, most underrated topics, in my opinion, when it comes to the kind of self-help stuff. Because I think it's kind of an advanced topic in some sense, like a newbie in the self-help stuff wouldn't get. And it's the topic of honesty. And actually, it's it's a really weird thing because honesty sounds like something that you should have since you're pretty young. Like since you're young, you're told you shouldn't tell lies, you should be a good kid, you should always tell the truth. And though at the same time you see some adults lying. So it's some sort of value that you kind of know that you should have, but we're not really taught why we should have it and why is it important. And I like to start with the reason of why we start lying. And I think that's due to moralism. Just think about it. When we were young kids, we would try to experiment with stuff just to learn about the world. And we will find out that some of our actions have consequences. And those consequences involve being punished. Like if you for example break a jar and your parents find out about it, you're gonna be punished. So what are you gonna do? If you're caught breaking the jar, or if they see the jar that is broken, you're gonna think, okay, if I tell that it was not me, but it was the cat, for example, they're not gonna punish me, and I can, yeah, and I can, I can get away with this one. So that's how we learn to lie. And not even and even stuff that I think that is the most common case when it's something involving pleasure, something that it's yes, something that gives you pleasure, but society will not see that well that you do it, so you lie about it to hide that punishment. Like, I don't know, let me try to give you an example about hiding your
Okay.
pleasure. Like, well, I think a pretty common example is you have a couple and you cheat on that couple. Cheating gives you
Okay.
pleasure because you're having a good sexual experience. But if you tell the
Okay.
truth, you're gonna have some sort of punishment, which is like a pretty big discussion with your couple, with your partner. So that's why we lie. And in all those cases, it's the reason of lying is trying to avoid that punishment. So that's kind of the view I have of why we lie. What's your view about it?
I wholeheartedly agree with 99% of what you said. And I like to say I disagree on 1%, but I don't know what to say about that. In general, generally agree. I agree that we evolve to avoid pain in a way. So we use lies to kind of cover that and avoid being reprimanded, avoid feeling emotional or not emotional pain onto oneself, but avoid hurting other people. But what we really achieve though is we hurt people even further. So it's evident that lying doesn't hurt and is not sustainable nor in the short nor in the long run. So that brings us to the topic of honesty. You told me that you read a book that's called Radical Honesty, right?
Yeah, basically, I mean, that's why I thought this podcast would be interesting because all my, like 99% of my ideas, or okay, let's say 95% of my ideas about honesty come from that book. But you haven't read that book and you have your own ideas about honesty. So I think we can compare what we have and maybe get something pretty interesting out of this.
Sure.
So, what was
My
your question?
question is, well, it was not a question. It was not a question. It was, tell me something about the book that you think I should and everybody should hear about.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, this is not a problem of the book. It's just that I found it pretty interesting and that it gave me a lot of less important lessons. So that's why I'm sharing it. But I'm sure there must be a lot of content on the internet about honesty that is pretty useful for you. So actually, what I learned, one thing that I learned from this book is that it's written by a psychologist, and it's a
Okay.
theoretical psychologist, I think, that it's been treating people from 20 years, especially topics about self-esteem or some fighting in couples. And the interesting thing that he found out is that 99% of the causes of our stress, like the major cause of our stress in our personal lives, is usually lying. It's usually hiding stuff and being afraid of other people to find it out. So,
Yeah.
like, I think in our daily lives, we don't even realize how much stress lying causes, like a real ton of stress, and it's something that we should see because it's basically something that we do without thinking about it, but we are operating in pilot mode while lying. And spotting that is a really big difference between ending up kind of unhappy than having a more meaningful or clear, honest life. So, according to that, actually, what I found out is like what that book is telling is that you should tell the truth like 99.9% of the times when you're hesitating about telling the truth or lying, even if it's stuff like cheating with your girlfriend. Like it tells you to tell your partner to tell if you cheated, that you cheated, and even stuff like how much fun you had, because then you're communicating honesty. And yeah, it can be a bad, a really bad news for the other person, but that can give you, or A, ending a relationship that wasn't really happy, or B, finding out the stuff that wasn't right with between you two, and fixing it after all that bad emotional moment. So the thing is that,
Okay.
yeah, so actually, if you base your relationships on lying, there's a really stressful and fake relationship that's being created there. And once you try to break out from that, man, it's really hard. Like, if you've been hiding a lie for years, the first time you release it feels like an atomic bomb. Like, pow, it's like a huge explosion.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, and it's a really hard move to do, but it's something you have to do if you want to live happier in general. Because I had this idea that I had in my mind that I found out not so long ago, and is that my definition of success is maximizing my happiness. And I found out that honesty is one way to get into that success, to get into that happiness. So if you make the habit of telling the truth, that first lie revealed would be like an atomic bomb, and the second would be like dynamite. But if you create that habit, those are going to become like tiny explosions. Then you and the people that are close to you will get used to it. So, how do you feel about it?
I feel great. I feel great about what you said in this little part that you talked about the book a little bit. Let me drift a little bit from the
Uh
topic.
huh.
I'd like to comment. I'd like to ask you one question. You said it was 99% of the
Okay.
time you'll be telling the truth. But what's bothering me right now is just that 1% that you haven't talked about. And I think you're trying to be silent about that, somewhat sneaky. So that's why I'm asking you right now about that 1%.
Yeah, I don't know if that 1% is actually an excuse that I put to myself to not tell the truth or not, because there are situations where I feel like it's not worth telling the truth, or it's not something that I should say. Like, I don't know, I've heard this example once. Like, imagine that you're in a funeral, there's the whole family crying for the person who has died, and you don't have to say that you don't believe in God if they are, or at least do not bring the topic if those people are religious and they are holding to the only idea that he's in a better place. So maybe not lying, but not telling the truth, which is also a form of lying, actually. So that's why
Yes.
I call it lying, because not telling the truth of something you think that you should say, it's also lying. Because actually, what this book also taught me is that in many situations that you're not forced to tell the truth, but you just can hide the lie. Sorry. Sometimes, if you feel like it's something you should talk about, or it's something that is bothering you, you should tell the truth in that thing, even if it's something that you're sure that you're never gonna get caught. Like, if you feel that that thing is not right, or it's something that is just tearing down all your integrity as a human being, you should talk about it. Like, you know, man, like, even stuff that you did in your teenage years and you didn't tell your parents then, and you and you were scared of for them of finding out about it then, and now you've grown
Yeah.
up, and like that thing has expired. But if you feel like if hiding that from them is tearing your relationship down, you should talk about it. You see what I mean?
I see totally what you mean, and I can picture that you're in the good path. Because at the end,
Thanks.
if we accumulate a lot of trash in the house, at first we got to remove the trash. It's got to be a lot of trash. And it's going to be
Yeah,
messy, it's
exactly.
going to be stinky, and at the first time it's going to suck. You'll get your hands on it, you're going to try to bring it out of the house, but it's going to be a pain. It's going to be like huge chunks of trash. So I like that approach you talked about. First, you drop a bomb, it sucks. Uh, it makes you feel bad or everything that entails. But at the end, if you do your daily maintenance, it pays. It pays a lot. It pays in mental inner peace. I would say. I would say as well.
Yeah, like I totally agree with the trash metaphor. Like, dude, there's some people that have the Diogenes, or however it's pronounced in English, that Diogenes syndrome of related with lying. Like, just keeping bringing trash and more trash into your house and never getting rid of it. Eventually, you find yourself between a house full of shit that you don't like to be there, but it's kind of, you feel like you needed to be there, yes, in case. And actually, telling the truth, it's liberating for some people. Like, there are stories of married couples that have been holding stuff for years, and it feels really uncomfortable when they say the stuff, and it's usually like a really tough emotional reaction. That's why we don't tell it, because if we tell something like a really strong lie that we've been hiding, then what we can expect is a really strong emotional reaction. And let's be honest, no one wants to go through that, because it's not pleasant. It's not gonna make you feel fine. But there is when you have to think in the long run, because in the long term, because in the long term, actually, if you go through that shitty moment, which is the moment of telling the truth, it's probably going to end up better in some weeks or some months. You know, eventually you will end up in a better situation than from when you started, because if you keep holding it, you're just gonna find yourself in some sort of pilot mode where your life doesn't seem it's changing, and you're holding some stuff that you don't like your whole life, and that damages your happiness and integrity quite a lot.
And then, for example, you lie to yourself, Carlos. Well, I'm not talking to you, Case. I'm just addressing you. So
Okay.
many times, if we lie, we get into the habit of lying, and then we justify our lies with even further lies. and then everything at one point collapses and crumbles. So that's pretty bad as well. So that we're entering into the habit of being honest. And now being honest with you, I'm gonna tell you like one little thing. I think
Okay.
I should clean my room more often because at times there's so much mess, let's say, that it bothers me, and then I clean it, and then it. I do a lot of effort on cleaning my room. I elevate everything super clean and organized. But then after time passes, I'm back again on the same track.
Wait, but are you talking of of a real case or it's a metaphor?
Talking about myself in my room.
Oh yeah, I have the same problems to be honest. Yeah, so yeah, and I think that's also living in adolescence. The idea of not telling the truth is because you want to pretend to be someone who you're not to other people. It's like being in adolescence because in adolescence you're finding your personality and you're trying to pretend stuff that you're not. So you experiment and you try to sell this image of yourself to other people. And that may get some people to like you, but at the end of the day, it won't be honest relationships. It won't be meaningful relationships that will eventually make you happy. It will just be fake relationships, like superficial relationships that'll be there, but I think they won't bring you the most fundamental things of human relationships. So that's why I think most of the people live in adolescence, and we have to break from that state, and we have to be more honest, even though that means looking worse to most of the people. But if we get to be honest, that generates more trust with the people around us. You see, and that creates more pure relationships. Also, if you're used to tell the truth, then you are someone more spontaneous. You see, like you don't find yourself like you don't have so many stuff to say because there's no filter. Everything that you're saying is 100% truth. Of course, that's an ideal. It's hard to get to that, but I think it's just this kind of image that we should have. So we have something to pursue, and yeah, that should be a goal. And I have
Okay.
I have one last thing to say about it that I found in this book. Do you want to add anything, or I'll go for it?
I'd like to hear you first, and then I'll add a couple things, and we'll kind of switch a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So one thing that was also pretty interesting to me is that we should be honest when expressing anger, because we actually human beings, we have a lot of anger repressed every single day. And actually, it was something that I found myself doing during most of my life. And when I read about that, like it got me thinking a lot, man. Like for me, expressing anger, I used to see it like a lack of emotional intelligence. Like you're not able to control your anger, therefore you express it, therefore you externalize it. But it's not that way actually, because you have to communicate honestly, and if you're angry you should at someone for something, you should say it. Of course, there are many different ways to express your anger. What you shouldn't do is to express your anger getting into personal stuff and being blind about it. Like you just have to be true and like with yourself, and to tell why you're angry and without judging the other person. And yeah, and actually that blew my mind, because I thought that shouldn't be said. That we should try to hold to create this kind of social harmony, let's say. But that idea of expressing anger, I found it pretty interesting. Yeah, and one last thing about it is that we think that okay, I'm angry at that. We usually think, okay, I'm angry at that person, but I'm going to forgive that person. So that's why I'm not going to communicate why I'm angry at that person. But what we should do, because that's how we do it and we do it wrong, is we should communicate the anger that we have at the other person. And once we've done that, we're able to forgive because there's been communication. The other person sees what's what's happened to you. So when you express what was inside you to the other person, then you're able to forgive because you've let that weight that you were carrying over your back, you let that go, and you feel much more free. So we forgive when we express our repressed feelings. And yeah, that's what I had to tell. Tell me your point right now.
Oh man, oh man. Let me tell you first. Oh man, call this. You just blew my mind right now. Let's say, not blew
Really?
my mind, but actually, you caused me. I mean, right now I'm having great recaps of a lot of things I've read, a lot of things I've experienced, and I think there's a lot of use for what you said
Oh,
because this is
leave
a
for reflection
foundational
section.
episode. Waiting for it, of course. Not gonna give specific feedback. Not gonna give like concrete, specific examples. But this thing, being honest, permeates every facet of our lives. So this is not something we can avoid. This is not a
Hmm.
choice. We just gotta be honest. Be the 99% honest you talked about
Yeah.
before. Uh, permeates everything. I mean, if you're honest, if you, for example, are mad with me, or if I'm mad with you, and if I'll tell you what did me wrong, it's gonna improve in the long run because we gotta understand better our friends and our dearest ones. Everything's gonna go smoother.
Yeah, exactly. Like you just realize that honesty is one of the most practical thing because uh, it's just like getting some sort of barrier that society has built between you and your friends, and you get it out, and there's like a really good fluid communication between you and your loved ones, and everything comes much smoother, and your friends know much more about you and how you truly are, and that's the beautiful thing about it.
I was trying to put this into practice, not consciously because I wasn't thinking about it at the moment, but unconsciously. And I started noticing some
Hmm.
subtle reactions or some kind of telltale signs. And it was kind of funny or kind of interesting to watch it from the outside. So let's practice this every day. I mean, we're gonna practice it every day for the rest of our lives, but try to think about it
Yeah.
when you're talking with a friend or something. It's really interesting and entertaining as well. Okay, so let's open the last section of this podcast, which I think it should be how honesty relates to art and productivity.
Okay.
Let's start with this. If we're honest, honesty essentially means self-expression, right, Carlos?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just a way of helping you not to lose time. Because if you want to lie in your life, at least the only person that you should never lie to is yourself. So I think practicing honesty also helps to your artistic expression, let's say.
So funny thing about it, Carlos, is that it is the first person you lie to. You don't lie, yeah, of course. You don't lie to other people. You lie to yourself first, so then you
Yeah.
can lie to other people. Otherwise, you couldn't look at them in the eye. At least in my case.
This is something pretty interesting. The best liars are the ones that believe their own lies.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that. But yeah, like that's the greatest manipulators are the ones that believe their own manipulations. Put in other words.
So true, so true. But let's narrow it down a little bit with this.
Okay.
Honesty for me is a synonym of art. And what is art? Art is self-expression. If we're honest with other people,
Yes.
in a way, we're gonna promote that people express themselves. If people express themselves freely and everybody feels more accepted, that's gonna turn into productivity
Hmm.
gains. That's kind of the thesis that I want to defend in this episode. Because if we're being honest, we're expressing ourselves with our friends, with our family, and everybody. At the end, it's gonna generate a positive cycle of emotions, and it's gonna generate momentum. and that's gonna promote it even further,
Yes.
right? And everything's gonna promote itself. I mean, we're gonna create a positive loop, and I think that's what we need right now in general. There's a lot of negativity to combat, so let's start ourselves, and then we'll push everybody around.
Yes, when you open to others, the usual reaction is that you create some sort of connection and trust in the other person you're opening to, and that creates a reaction effect, making that person trust you even more, and that makes the person open to you. And then, as that person opens to you, you trust the other person more, and you open even more, and that creates a loop and a chain reaction that creates a pretty cool conversation. And about what we said, I think we can get into more practical examples, but I think the best way to do it is to tell examples of our daily lives or our situations that we've experienced. So I think we're gonna leave this topic here, and the stuff that we still have to talk about, you can listen to it in the reflection section probably in a couple of days after this video is uploaded. So I think that's all we had to say. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Joel, and as always, see you in the next one. Bye.